Hey, the floor is yours.
Kia ora, 𝗪𝗲𝗀𝗃𝗃. My name's Vesna Radonich, international paddling coach. Just want to say a big thank you to you all for making the time today to join in the Zoom link. A special thank you to 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗃 for the opportunity. So 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗃 I've probably met about 4 years ago, and I've been really fortunate enough to meet her in person 2 years ago, and very grateful again for the opportunity to journey with her across Canada and be able to see Canada's beauty as well as be a part of her thesis that she did on a coach life. So a little about me is not a little, it's going to be a lot. I said kia ora, 𝗪𝗲𝗀𝗃𝗃, which is kia ora Māori for hello, and Croatian for hello. I'm part Croatian and part Māori, and I acknowledge both cultures because their number one value is family. And so family has always been an important part of my life and where I am today. So tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Vesna ahau, ko Pukerua te maunga, ko Waikato te awa, ko Maniapoto te iwi, ko Tainui te waka. Ko Hangatuki te marae, ko te tuku nui anoho te hapu, ko Daphne te mama, ko Mladen te papa. So I just did a greeting in Māori, and when we do that in our culture, it's to let people know where we're from, our ancestral lines, our genealogy, the mountain that we come from, the rivers that we come from, and the tribe. And why that's important is in the sport of outriggers and dragon boating and paddling, we do that sport because we want to find that connection. So with that cultural welcoming I just did is to create that connection. So paddling for me began in my school years. I did dragon boating at school, and I did it so that I could get out of class, and because I was born with a hearing loss, and I'm not able to wear my hearing aid in the dragon boat or outrigger. Seeing the people in front of me. So then the sport was great. I then went overseas. I'm from New Zealand. I went overseas in my 20s to Australia and was introduced to dragon boating over there. And it was another level up, highly competitive, a lot of gym structured programs and a lot of technique and drill. And I really enjoyed it because, again, my hearing loss was not considered a disadvantage, because growing up with a hearing loss, I was told I was dumb and stupid because people with a hearing loss were considered dumb. So in my earlier years, I didn't have much confidence in myself as a person. I went through quite a few behavioural things. So for example, when I was little and I was about 2 years old, the doctors diagnosed me with ADHD and behavioural problem. Mum was like, no, there's something else. It's not that. So the doctors did hearing tests and it came back. She's fine. It's her. It's this there. Mum said, no, it's not. It's something else. She said that because in my kindergarten or my preschool, my friends would tap me on my shoulder to get me to turn around to talk to them because they knew I couldn't hear. So the doctors said, okay, fine, we'll do another hearing test. So here I am. I've got the special headpiece on, and what I've got to do is I've got to listen for a sound. And when I hear that sound, there's a board with beads or pegs, and I've got to put those pegs or beads into the hole when I hear the sound. So what does Vesna do? She gets all the pegs and puts them all in, and the nurses and the doctors are like, no, wait. So they held my hand. Then they would make the noise into the microphone, or sorry, the headset, and I'd hear it. They thought I could hear it. And then they'd let go of my hand and I'd put the bead in. They'd make another noise, let go of my hand, put the bead in. My mum said she's not responding to the sound. She's responding to you letting go of her hand to put the bead in. So she made them do the test, and it came back that I didn't have the ADHD and that, but that was a little bit of the side effect of not hearing. So from the age of 2 to the age of 4, that's how long it took my parents fighting with the doctors. At 4.5, I got my first hearing aid. And Mum and Dad were so relieved. And Mum took me to the toilet and I screamed. And Mum goes, what's wrong? I screamed because I'd never heard a toilet flush before. And a hearing aid made a huge, big difference in my life. So with the ups and downs, I said that my confidence wasn't very good. So when I got to my 20s and moving to Australia, a great opportunity to continue with my dragon boating. And then one day someone said, try this other sport. And it's called outrigging. So that thing was that low, a little bit shorter than a dragon boat. And instead of 20 people, it was 6. And it had 2 pieces of wood and an umma to balance. And again, I said to the coach, I can't hear. Is that okay? Not a problem. We'll make you the caller. Sweet. What does the caller do? Okay, so every 10 to 12 strokes, you're going to call a hut. And then you do the extra stroke and then you change sides. I fell in love with it. Why? She didn't let my hearing be a disadvantage. Why I share that with you is that my coach then at that time had just come off the Olympics. They were K1 Olympic champions. And here I was, this everyday person. She was showing me that even at top level, she didn't judge me for who I am. She just simply showed me how I can participate. And I had such respect for her after that. And I certainly trained a lot harder and smarter. And she introduced me to very good training regime. There was a balance of cardio, running, swimming, nutrition, balancing life. And with that, we came out in the top for Australia. I'm very grateful for that experience. Fast forward track to getting homesick from living in Australia. I decided to move back to New Zealand and continue the dragon boating and the outrigging. And I sat through some interesting styles of training. It made me realise that the Australian level and the international level of training in dragon boating and outrigging was different. A lot stricter overseas. In New Zealand, it was a little bit more relaxed, and I wasn't used to that. And so when I tried to balance my training, my off-water, etc., on-water, etc., I was told, you don't need to be at the gym, you need to be paddling. I was like, in my head going, but you're supposed to balance it. Well, that style of coaching became a bit challenging, and it got to a point where the coach was quite belittling of me. And so one day turned around to me and said, you're uncoachable, you don't listen, you might as well get off the waka and paddle and swim home. And even though I didn't have my hearing aids on, I could lip read. And in my head, I was like, I'm not getting off this waka and swimming home because you think I'm uncoachable and I don't listen. I know that I paddle right. I know what it needs to be done. But I was like, okay, fine. So I didn't get off and I didn't swim, but I gave up the sport. And a couple of years later, I was down in a place called Gisborne, which will become home for me in New Zealand. And the ladies said, the waka lady, what are you doing not paddling? Oh, so-and-so says I'm uncoachable, I don't listen, and I'll be a nobody. And they said, who is it? I'm not telling you. And they said something to me which was really important. They said, does she have any titles or achievements or medals? And I said, no. I said, what are you doing listening to her? She doesn't know what she's talking about. Get yourself back in that canoe. I listened to them. Why? Because they were national and world champions. So I started building my confidence back up in the sport, and I had to go back to the club I had left. And I said to the coach, I'd like to come back if I can. I have to be honest, I don't cope with your coaching style. Are you okay if I just do one man's or that single craft? He said, sweet, not a problem. And so I just continued and thrived up and started winning races. I went back to doing what I believe which was right, gym training, nutrition. I started climbing up to a point where in the outrigger world, I'd just rock up and I'd be 2 minutes ahead of people. I would sit in a race and I would sit and wait for 2 minutes and then I'd hunt everyone down. I was getting called up for dragon boat to come paddle for the national team, to come paddle for the world team. So Vesna had risen herself as an athlete. Then I decided I want to win the world title in outriggers. I stepped away a bit from dragon boating to outriggers. I want to win the world title in the open women. So for those that do dragon boating, outrigging in an individual category, the premier, and I think you guys have premier as well, is the highest level you can go. So I wanted to win the individual world title in the sport and the premier women. Back then, the Tahitians were the best in the world. And so I sold up all my canoes, my life, and I moved over to Tahiti. And I lived there on and off for 2 years. Why I say on and off is you can live there 90 days and then you must leave for 2 days and then you can go back. What I got out of that was in outrigging, there's 3 components for the sport. There is the physical component, which is the gym training, the off-water training, the balancing your nutrition, the technical side. That's what Australia taught me, and I'm grateful. That's one side of it. Then there's the other side, which is the mental, the focus side. I got that through my sport, but I also got it in New Zealand through the not good experiences I went through that helped me to build resilience, the growing up and being bullied for my hearing loss, that had given me the mental resilience as an athlete. So I had the physical and I had the mental. The key, which came from Tahiti, was the, how do I say, the feeling, the connection side to the sport. Because you can be physically fit and do all the trainings and that. You can have the mental focus, but if you can't feel that paddle going in and you can't feel all the muscles working and feel what it does, then you're disconnected. And so the Tahitians used to laugh at me. They used to go, Vesna, hey, stop paddling like you're in a battlefield. You know, you're just looking robotic. Just relax. Just go play. Go feel. And I'm like, I'm trying to. You guys just make it look easy. But they taught me that you have to be connected to who you are. You have to connect to the feeling. You have to connect to the feeling of the elements, of the water, of the surroundings. They taught me that missing link. And I share that with you because if you ask a Tahitian or Hawaiian, what does paddling mean to you? And even the First Nation people, and they will say to you, it feels like when they put their paddle in the water, that their ancestors are traveling up through the paddle, up through their arms and into their bodies. And as they pull, they are pulling with their people. They are digging in deep to their ancestry. They are digging into their genealogy. They're digging into who they are as people and bringing to the forefront of their people, our people. We know how to read water. We know how to read current. We know how to read what's happening around us. We know how to read the elements. That is such an important part of the sport that people still aren't even tapping into today. And that's what they taught me. Did it pay off? Yes, it did. 2012, I went to Canada for the World Outriggers, and I won the Premier Women's V1, becoming the first New Zealander, becoming the first person with a disability to win the world title. Fast track on, there's now been another New Zealand girl with a hearing loss like myself who has won the world title. So she and myself, we show you that life does, no matter your disabilities or your challenges in life, you can make your own successes. You've got to be self-driven, self-aware, and always willing to grow. After winning the world title, invited by our New Zealand top team to paddle for them, we went on to win gold in the women's premier as well. So now 12 years on, where has Vesna been and what has this led to? After winning the world title, I stepped away to become a mum, and I really thought I would stop paddling, but I didn't. I kept continuing my paddling. I started being asked to come back to Tahiti and to be able to coach other paddlers. But it was a compliment to be able to come back, but I really wanted to help New Zealand and develop paddlers, but also I wanted to be able to help paddlers all around the world and help them have the opportunities that I had. And that is how International Paddling Coach, my business that I have today, was formed. It was part-time. Now it's moved full-time because my son is 11 and my daughter is 6, so they're both at school. With my children, they attend a Māori speaking school, which is the national language of New Zealand, because culture is really important to me. I love what I do. Today, I coach online through virtual reality or virtual coaching. I also travel the world doing workshops, and I write training programs. I have over 8 world titles under my belt in individuals and team, and still continue to retain amongst the top 3 in New Zealand and the world after 𝗄𝗸𝗃. I'm the only athlete in New Zealand who has, as a woman, that I can proudly say, been able to have babies, bounce back and still make the world stage. There are other women in New Zealand who have had babies, but they have not bounced back into the world stage. So that's something pretty cool that I'm proud of. I've also now stepping into the 50s division and going through the menopausal stage of women, and that's been a really amazing journey. Recently been in Canada, I've been Brazil, I've been in Hong Kong, Australia, Hawaii, USA, and I've really had some amazing opportunity to work with paddlers, and I love what I do. I love when I can see them get it. I'm one of those people that will work with a paddler as much as I can to bring their strength, because as a coach, I'm not trying to tell them, okay, it must go here and it must go here. I teach paddlers to reach deep inside and understand what their body can do and go, well, what are the strengths that I have as a personality, and in my internal strength that I can use to apply to a stroke. So what I mean by that is someone with a short torso and long arm, their reach is going to be slightly different of what their body can do than someone with long torso and short arms. We need to encourage our people, our paddlers, to be able to utilize what they have and the strengths they have to be able to apply their strokes effectively. I don't say that my way is the right way. I'm only here to help those and give them tools and tips that have helped me to become the paddler, athlete, champion coach that I am today. I'm still learning. So it's been 6 years on since the business has been going full time, probably 2 years. I'm excited because now I have an administrator who has stepped in, and there's still more opportunities to grow. I thank you all for allowing me to be a part of your paddling journey, and I wouldn't be where I am today without you all. So that's a little long story about me and where I am today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vesna. You have a couple questions in the question box here. The first one is, can you please share race start strategy for OC6?
So is that for sprints or endurance?
I would assume both. Christine
Both.
is
For endurance.
Okay. So with a canoe, when you start a race, it sits quite low in the water. So you want to be able to set up your position, your body, to be able to get a good pull to lift the canoe out of the water. Because it's sitting lower, it would need a bit of a deeper drive in the stroke. Because it's sitting so low, you'll need a bit more power or a lot of power to pull the canoe out. When you apply your body, you want to make sure that when you set up, it's not hyperextended or too short, but set up in a way that if someone told you to hold this for 2 minutes, you could hold it. If your shoulders start hurting after 30 seconds, that means you've set up in a way that's just quite hard and uncomfortable for your muscles to be able to generate the power. When you go to place in, everybody needs to go in at exactly the same time. When you go to pull, you want to make sure that your body is nice and strong as you pull. If you push down and then push up, it will do this to the canoe. You want to make sure that that paddle's going in and it's pulling the canoe up and out. As a team, everybody goes in exactly the same place, same angle. Everyone pulls together. Everyone exits at exactly the same time. Everyone needs to do their return exactly the same. Why I say all of this stuff is so many people focus just on getting the catch, but they don't focus on pulling together, exit together, and return together. Because if you want to get that canoe up and out, you need to make sure that you're not just getting the catch together, you're doing everything together to get the canoe out. So your first stroke's going to be quite deep and solid. The canoe's now up and running a little bit. So therefore, not so much hunger in the pull, but then the rate starts to become a bit faster because you've got some momentum. Then by the third stroke, your momentum's a little bit faster, so therefore your pull is faster. You need to make sure that you are working together at exactly the same. You need to understand that a canoe, when it's stationary, requires a lot more power to pull it up and out. You need to understand that after about the third stroke, the canoe's got the speed. And then what most people will do is they usually will lock their body forward and then they'll go into like a tapping fast stroke. The reason I say locking forward is if you don't lock forward, this is what's going to happen, and that's what's going to happen to the boat when you start moving into that faster stroke to keep the canoe gliding across. So that faster stroke, the purpose of the fast stroke or the tapping stroke is to keep the canoe gliding across the water. It's not to provide muscle and power. The purpose of the stroke is to keep the canoe gliding. We want to keep it gliding, and that sometimes can take 2 to 3 sets of tapping it, locking your body forward. Here's the thing. With the tapping stroke, it comes out at the knee. If you pull past your knee, it is not that tap fast stroke anymore. It becomes the power stroke because you're introducing more muscles to help. With the tapping stroke, it is predominantly more your arms. That's why you're locking forward. So usually a team will do about 3 sets of that fast one, and then they go into more of a power stroke. So the power stroke is because you need more power from your body. So when you're like this, it's quite fast and it's quick. You don't get much power, you get speed. When you transition to the next stroke, you need to make sure that it's smooth, not rigid. You need to make sure that when you do the first changeover, you're still going to tap a few, then you're going to transition into a power stroke. So the power stroke is going to introduce more of this part of your body. You'll find that no more are you locked forward, you're slightly sitting up so that you can get more power. The tapping stroke, just like this, then you go into that power and power. When you do it, you have to be exactly in sync, all in together, you pull together, you exit together, you return together. If you rush one part of the stroke, it makes the pacer lose their rhythm. Your steerer then has to brake, and because the canoe will go crooked, and then the rhythm goes. You cannot be alone in what you do. You must always be completely with the team in every part of the stroke. So with that, I say we usually do 3, 4 big ones to get the momentum. Then we'll go into the fast stroke, locking our body forward. Then we'll do a couple of sets of those, and then we'll go into our power stroke. Every team is different. When you're doing those different strokes, you need to set some stroke rates. So what I mean by that is that tapping stroke, juniors can probably do up to 90 strokes a minute. Seniors, probably 70 strokes a minute. Why I'm saying stroke rates is that if you're all conditioning yourself to sustain a set stroke number, it will work. But if you just go in there and just go and do the tapping stroke and just hope that, it's going to blend, it's harder to blend. But if you know that everyone's doing that tapping stroke at 70 strokes a minute, it will work. Then when you go into that power stroke, what's that number going to be? For open men, they sit at about 32 strokes a minute using the power one. Women generally sit at about 45 to 47 strokes, 48 strokes with that power one. If you are doing that power stroke at more than 60 strokes a minute, how can you guarantee me that at 60 strokes, 1 stroke a minute, and the power stroke, you're generating power? Because this is not power, 60 strokes a minute. 1, 2, this is power. And unless you're tiny, a little fit thing, then you'll be able to sustain that 60 strokes a minute of power. But if you're like me trying to sustain 60 strokes a minute of power, you won't get much out of me. You'll get it if you give me 47, 48 strokes a minute, I'll be able to give you power. Does that help?
Yes, Vesna, thank you. It's Christine from North Carolina.
Oh, cool. Kia ora. If I'm not clear or you have further questions, just comment below. This is stuff I share. I don't say my way is the right way. Whatever your coach said overrides everything I say, because your coach is putting in a lot of time and they're doing things to do the best that they can for your team. So just, I have much respect for coaches.
Okay, we have another question from Kaylee. She says that she's really determined to do the 𝗓𝗓𝗁𝗃𝗃 Am I saying that correctly? Kaylee, if you want to come on, you can.
Aloha Vesna. Mahalo for sharing your story. Um, I just finished my first novice season paddling, regatta like OC6, so sprinting. I'm really determined to do the Nawahine Okikai next year, which is like the crossing from Molokai to Oahu, the women's race. Do you have any advice for cross training and or OC1 training that I should be adding on to like my regular crew training?
I would be asking, what are you currently doing? Because I cross train between swimming, between weight training, between speed training and strength training. So what I mean by that is, say the event is happening in, I'm not saying it is, say it's happening in December, and we're currently in January. February, March, April, May, June, I'd probably be working on maintenance and basic strength and building endurance up. Then June, July, I would be adding more strength, more overload, more resistance training, and starting to increase my how long I'm going for. Then I would go into a speed phase where I'd be dropping off the resistance, keeping up my distance, and then adding in some speed phases. I would be doing a lot of my slower strength trainings with a lot of rest more at the beginning. As I move into my speed phase, I would be doing more explosive off-water training. It's like periodized. It depends when you need to be performing. So, for example, I'm going to check in sprints for New Zealand. We are in October. We have our qualifiers in November, end of November, and then the world qualifiers are in January. So I've been doing all my base fitness and endurance. In October, I added strength-based. I add resistance into the canoe, I add more waves, and I add resistance. And now my gym training is becoming more heavy loaded to increase strength because I move into the strength phase. Then come after the qualifiers, the local level ones, which are in end of November, I'm tapering and switching over to speed. Because the reason I move into speed is I've used the last couple of months to build my paddle endurance up. I've now focused on building my strength up. To have effective speed and long distance and speed and sprint, you need to have good strength and good cardio endurance. So then I'll move into my speed phase, and then about 2 weeks before the main event, I'll do a taper, and then I'll start going up. I adjust my off-water training to suit what part or phase I am with the trainings. Closer and closer to the main event, my weight training comes down because I need to be able to spend more paddle time, especially for those big, huge races. Those long races and the sprint ones, I start to taper off my strength gym stuff and just focus just more on the pedaling. Does that help?
That helps a lot. Thank you.
That's cool. If it doesn't, just ask for some more clarity. If you have a look at you can AI, you can gym it, and you go, how do I plan for an endurance race? You'll see that there's phases in there. There's the endurance phase, there's the strength phase, there's the speed, there's the fine tuning, taper, and then race phase. And your off water, your nutrition, your rest has to adapt to whichever phase you're in. So I'll just chuck an example. When you're building your endurance up, You go for longer ones that are lower intensity, so you're not too tired. When you're getting closer to a speed phase, it's a lot more explosive and it is tiring, but you have lots of rest. So you need to increase some of your nutritional things to be able to cope with those stresses. When you go through your taper phase, the amount of what you need for the nutrition and recovery, etc., changes again. And then when you go to race, that's when that changes a little bit as well. So it's just not just about how to train, it's also about making sure that you manage your off-water training, off-water nutrition, off-water sleep as well. And one of the biggest things that athletes probably don't do enough is have a taper week before a main event. I've seen so many people just train right up to the event, and then when the event happens, they're just so shattered. They don't have the energy. The taper, that's where you start to reduce things so that your body can repair itself and get ready to perform. But yeah, taper is so important. Is that all right?
Mahalo.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and we have another question here. There's actually there's a two-part. How do you get good leg drive in a single versus an OC? And can you talk about foot placement?
Hip placement.
Foot placement.
Okay, cool. And the leg drive. Now, I'm just going to put the video so you can see me. Okay, I'm going to go back even more. So for leg drive, depends if you're on a spec boat to an unlimited, to the Malolos, to the hydras. So in a spec boat, you sit lower, right? The canoe sits lower in the water. You generally will have a seat that your bum can come off the back. So with the spec boats, they're really good because you can get more rotation to get that leg drive. So what I mean by that is we want to get leg drive. So how do we do that? So what I generally will do is the side that I'm paddling on, I put that leg to the front. With the other knee, I usually will take my foot and put it down on the ground. I leave my heel up. I try not to put my heel down because if I put my heel down, it makes it hard to get rotation. I'll generally let this knee go out to the side to press against the gunnel when I go to rotate. Why do I press my knee against the gunnel when I go to rotate forward? So that I have a bracing and a holding point that I can get some power. With the leg that I have forward, that knee, I generally will run it alongside the gunnel so that I can get strong power placement. If my knee is in here, I can find that it's hard to hold the strength and I have to lean one way or another. When I put my knee out to the side on both sides, I'm strong. I can hold everything in here, 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 and I can feel my core and my muscles ready to generate power. I will take my butt cheek and I rotate the hip forward. So I say I slide my butt cheek forward, and then as I pull, I will push with my foot to pull my leg and pull my hip back onto the seat. Then I say I use my paddle to return the hip to the front. I will then pull and use my leg, my foot, to pull back. I never lift one hip up like this because what does that do? It puts a stress and it throws your body out of alignment. I make sure that my hips stay centered and I rotate the hip forward, or I say slide the butt cheek forward, then I pull it back. I don't lift one up or the other because then you're doing this to your body, and it's not healthy to do it. You have to make sure that you're mindful of your hips. So I'll show it from another angle. So if I'm on this side angle, I put this leg forward, the other knee is going to slide along the gunnel. Now I want you to watch here. You'll not see me lift or drop a hip. You'll see the hip stays forward. So the hip stays centered. So rotate that hip forward. Then with the foot, pull it back. Rotate that hip forward, pull back. If I'm on a speedboat and if I want more power, I sit back further on the seat. The further back you sit, the more power you can drive. If you fit on the edge of the seat, there's less power in the leg drive. Further back on the seat, you have more power in your legs. With the malolos, some of the speedboats, you don't have that ability because they've got something behind you that doesn't let you go forward and back too much, which means you have to really focus on that rotation of the hip and pulling from the leg, even if it's just a small gap. The great thing with the malolos and the lightweight boat are they are buoyant, they have a flat bottom. They sit up higher on the water. So we don't need to drive so much power to get them up and going. The speedboats sit lower, so they require a lot more power to get them moving. So with the speedboat, just so the unlimited, the lightweights, the malolos, the hydras, just need to do enough to rotate the hip forward and then pull. Rotate, pull. You don't want to be doing this because what that does is doing this to your spine. And we are not designed to walk or move like this. But people go, but hey, I want to get some more power at the back of the stroke. Well, you can. When you do that rotation, you pull. When you need more power, just pull like this. Don't pull with the whole body like that. If you do this every time, it's going to stress the spine and it's not healthy for your body. Because here's the thing. When you walk, do we walk like this? Can you imagine how much hard work that is on the body? If you're pulling your stroke like this, you will then have to bring your spine back into alignment, then take the hip forward to generate the power. You're adding extra work on. So here's the thing. People go, oh, but you know, we need to be able to use our hip. In kayaking, they have a double lever, right? It's a paddle at each end. So because you've got a paddle at each end, they can move their hips forward and back because they've got the momentum of a double lever. So they do go forward and back. In outrigging, you've only got one lever, one paddle, but people try and do this hip forward and hip back thing, but they haven't got the other lever there. So in kayaking, they rotate forward and back. In outrigging, we only have one lever. It's about the rotation forward to the center line. Rotate forward, center line. We don't want to pull our hip back because we don't have the other lever or the other pedal like in kayaking. If you do that, you're going to be using more work to bring your hip back to where it needs to be and then taking the paddle to the front and rotating it forward. Did that kind of help for the sixth man?
I think so. We have another question here.
Yep.
What do you carry with you in long races for fueling and hydration?
The little H block, the little cramp blocks. I carry them. They're anti-cramp blocks. And I'll usually lick them and put them on the canoe. In my hydration, I put electrolytes. I've actually started putting a bit of amino acids in them, and I find that really helps. Everyone's different. I do change my electrolytes flavors. So sometimes I have, I think it's the berry flavor. Sometimes I'll have the lime flavor. Sometimes I have the apple flavor. The main thing is I always test and try it in training first. I don't wait for race day to test things. I take gels with me. Sometimes if it's a long race where we're changing in and out, I'll do things where I make banana pancakes. I will do things where I have peanut butter sandwiches. Sometimes I have what's called sweet potato. Sometimes I have cold coffee, dark chocolate. That's for if it's a changeover race. Everybody's different. When you come to looking at long races, you've got to try things that work well for you. Main thing is that you are putting electrolytes into your fluids because you're going to sweat. And when you sweat, you're sweating out your electrolytes, which are your energy source. So you need to make sure that you're replacing what you're losing. If it's a really, really hot day, you probably need to make sure that those electrolytes in your fluids are nice and cold. So it just depends on your climate. So another thing we do is we have electrolytes, and then when we used to do changeovers race, on the last 4K, we would have a flat Coca-Cola, and that was just enough to give us that bit of boost of energy for the last leg. But you have to test it. You have to try it first. Don't make the mistake that I've seen paddlers do where they decide on the day and they end up with cramp, throwing up, or not even able to keep paddling. Does that help?
Yes. And we have another one here.
Yeah.
Short, powerful strokes, a quick stroke versus long strokes, the patient stroke. When would you use both of those?
Okay, so before talking about that tap stroke, that's probably that fast stroke. That's where the fast stroke is where it goes in and it generally comes out at the knee. Whereas the long stroke, so the tapping stroke will usually come out at the knee. The long stroke comes out past the hip. But there's also another stroke, so there's your power stroke. So your tap stroke or your fast stroke usually comes out before the knee. The power stroke comes out past the knee. The long stroke comes out past the hip. So the tapping stroke or the fast one we use at a start or maybe to tap onto a wave. And the power stroke, we usually use that when we're trying to power past the team or part of that powering onto a wave. And a long stroke is the stroke we would use for a long period of time to sustain over a long race. So when would I use? Yeah, either or. So for sprints, I use all three. I'll start off with the 3 deep, then I'll go into that fast stroke. Then I usually go into a long stroke. And then into a little while, I'll go into a power stroke. And then I'll go into another one called a bell stroke, but that's another conversation. When I'm doing long distance race, I'll start with the 3, 4 deep, then go into the fast one. Then we go into that power stroke, which has more power from the leg. and then we go into a long stroke. When you're doing the different strokes, it's, like I said before, it's important to set a stroke rate number to apply. Because if you set that stroke rate number, mentally and physically, your body conditions to it. So, for example, this works. I had a team train, and I said the goal is to sustain 50 strokes a minute of the long stroke. And those girls trained that way. And then there was one paddler that said, oh, but I'm following this program and I want to do this. I said, normally I say no. I said, no, you do it. And the reason I let her do it, because I wanted to see the effects of if some people train the same program, same stroke rate, and someone who just trains as they are. So what happened at the races, 5 of us are continuously sitting at that stroke rate, and it's working, and she's there with us. Then from time to time, her stroke starts to sort of change, and it's not sitting at that nice rhythm anymore. In a 26-kilometre race we were doing. And what was happening when she was doing that is she wasn't sticking to our stroke rate, and our speed, how do I say this? It was actually making us go slower, because she was trying to make us go on a faster stroke rate, which was, we had bigger people, and it didn't work. She was trying to push 60 strokes a minute. Whereas in the one set, that once she stopped trying to push her and stick at the 50 strokes a minute, then we got faster. So I did that as an example to show that if you're going to set a stroke rate, if you're going to focus, on a stroke long power, get the team to condition themselves to that set number for the power stroke, set number for the long stroke. Because there is no, the long must go in here and here, we know that. But what makes it successful is the team that trains to sustain that stroke rate number. So, for example, I think, like I said before, elite men on the long stroke can sit at 30 to 32 strokes a minute. Their number is really low because they produce so much power per stroke. Whereas the women, I think the elite ones were sitting at 50 strokes a minute because they produce less power per stroke, which means their number goes up, which is different to the men. But in saying that, master 60 women, I've seen them sit at 42 to 45 strokes a minute over a long race. And then I've seen some 60s try and do 60 strokes a minute. And the one that had the slower stroke rate ended up beating the one with the faster stroke rate. It just comes down to what your team can do, but also understanding as you age, you need to adjust your stroke rate, your long stroke rate to suit the demographics and the ages of the people that you have. So I don't know if that's helped to answer when you would use those different strokes. Did that help for you?
Yeah, I think that's very good.
Yeah, just think going back to when I would use those different strokes, is I'd use the fast one when I'm trying to get onto a wave, start a race. The power one I'd use when I just might need to power to stay on the wave or power to pass the team. I would never use the fast and the power stroke for a long period of time in a long race, because the power and the fast stroke will burn you out. I focus more on the long stroke and the long races, and I slot in the power and the fast stroke when I need that boost or when I need that ride on the wave, when I need to pass that team. But I do not paddle a long endurance race with that power stroke because you will burn out.
Okay.
Just saying, because some people try to power stroke for 10 kilometres and they burn out after 5 kilometres. paddlers that focus more on the long stroke for the long races will last longer. Cool?
Excellent. When it comes to OC6 seating, do you have a strategy? Is there certain people or attributes that you're looking for each seat in the OC6?
Yeah. So seat 1, I look at someone who can be calm no matter what's thrown at them, someone who can feel the team behind them and set up a stroke that they can work with. Your seat 1 want to be able to have a good relationship with seat 6 and be able to read the line that the steer is taking, be able to have a bit of ocean experience and being able to read when to push up when they need to push up. Seat 2 is someone who's quite analytical, who can be able to, of course, follow seat 1, communicate with seat 1 to keep them motivated, as well as being able to read the steerer's line and make sure that she or he is applying a stroke to complement the run of the boat or the line that steerer is taking. Seat 3 is usually someone who has just a good steady tone of the heart if they're going to be the heart caller, and has power from a calming place, and is really good at being able to keep it smooth, keep the nice and light, not let the bounce up and down. And again, reading where the steerer is trying to send them to make sure that they're calling the heart to complement the line, or where the bumps are going to push people. Seat 4 needs to be a good monotone motivator. Your seat 4 needs to make sure when they talk, it's a complete different tone to the hearts. Your seat 4 also needs to be able to be reading where the steerer is taking the team, reading when it feels the bump to be able to call people. Your 4 needs to feel that people are all in time and call them in, and keep the words calm, only speak when needs to be spoken, and uses words that the team have all talked about before going to practice, and words that are just simple. Usually legs, breathe, squeeze, relax. And a good team would have a conversation before about what those words mean and what they need to do. Seat 5 is generally one of the strongest paddlers you have in the boat. Why? Because from time to time, your seat 6 is going to be predominantly having to steer. They're not going to be able to always paddle, because the steerer's job is to focus on keeping the canoe light and tracking the line. So if the steerer is spending time correcting and moving, you don't have much power from them. So you need to make sure that your seat 5 is one of the strongest paddlers to be able to pull for 5 and 6. You also want your 5 to be one of the strongest, so that if you need a push from the back to get onto a wave and the steerer's got to be drawing, you've got that power coming from 5. The mistake I've seen teams do too much is put one of the weakest paddlers into seat 5. What's also helpful is if you've got a seat 5 who has a bit of steering capabilities as well, to be able to help, because sometimes the can get quite choppy, and the seat 5 might need to stay on one side for a long time. The seat 5 might also need to help the steerer. So the steerer's job is to set the best possible line they can for you. The steerer cannot control the front of the canoe. Seat 1 and 2 control the front of the canoe. The steerer cannot control the middle of the boat. Seat 3 and 4's job is to control the middle and the direction of the middle of the canoe. The steerer can only control from the back to back. The steerer will set up the best possible line that they can. It's up to the 5 paddlers to read the steerer's line, work out where the steerer is trying to take them, and provide the best possible stroke so the steerer can confidently be able to paddle. If 5 paddlers hop in and just paddle and don't even take any time to read the steerer's line, the steerer is going to have to work a lot harder. Your job in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is not only to paddle your best, but to paddle utilizing where the steerer is trying to take you. If you can take the time to read where the steerer is trying to take you and provide a stroke that the steerer can work, the canoe can complement with that line, then your steerer is going to be so happy they'll be able to paddle more and keep it light. Job as the steerer is to be light with what they do. I don't care if you weigh 80 kilos, 100 kilos, or 60. One of the most beautiful races I've been in has been with a big lady, but she's steering and she's light from the back. I can't even feel what she's doing. The hardest race is when you've got the steerer who just grinds their muscles and puts the brakes on. As a steerer, your job is to be light what you are doing from the back. From time to time, safety is a factor, where then, of course, you apply a bit more aggression in the stroke or in the steering. But if you are continuously grinding and muscling from the back, the rest of the team feels it and you'll burn them out. Really important as a steerer to learn to be light with what you do. Does that help?
That is really great.
Cool.
I have one last question. If there's anybody who has a question that's on, just raise your hand. Any last questions for Vesna? Okay, here's my one last question I have. When you are going to do a buoy turn for the first time, what advice would you give?
For a sprint turn,
Yes.
it depends on the canoe.
And
You
we have a
you
hand
have
up here too.
You have so many, like, for example, if you're on the ultralights, which are the hydras, you've got the hydras, you've got the vortex, the malolos. You can possibly hang with 1 and 2. So hang is where you're pivoting out. But then you can also have seat 1 jab at the front to make it spin faster. In the lightweights, we have kind of done what's called a double hang, which is where both seat 1 are hanging and the rest are paddling. When we've been in the spec boats, which are a lot lower, we have done the posting from the front, but we've also done 2 people hanging at the front and the rest of the people paddling right through. We've done both, but there's the other things you need to consider. If you have a headwind coming towards you, you will be doing a lot more to power up to the turn, and then when you do your hang or your posting, because you're going on a headwind, your canoe is going to drift quickly into the buoy, so you may have to have 3 and 4 really powering through on the turn to help it turn, because you'll need to try and get around quickly before the headwind pushes the umma into the buoy. Where if you were going with the wind behind you, when you get to the buoy, you would be going in to do your hang or your post sooner to put the brakes and stop the canoe from drifting too far. When you do it on a headwind and you've got the wind behind you, your 1 and 2 will hang a little bit earlier, And you'll find possibly your 3 and 4 don't need to pull too much power through because it's already got a lot of speed coming in because you're coming on a downwinder. What you may find is that your 5 might need to draw a little bit more to help that tail come around. There is no one set weight. If you have a perfectly flat glass day, no wind, no variables, we generally would do the post at the jab. Seat 1 would do the post or the jab at the front against the boat, and then your seat 2 would hang out to the side, and then everyone else generally will just paddle right through. It just depends on the day, the conditions, and depends on the canoe. The best advice I can say is to watch what other teams do and test it in different conditions. So what I mean by that is, if you've got a river that runs this way, practice a turn going with the current and then practice a turn coming against the current, because you'll notice what you do is slightly different, because the canoe will turn differently when there's other variables there. Then when you hop into a spec boat to a lightweight, again, you might do a double hang or you might do a pivot at the front or a hang. There is no one set way. So, for example, we practiced doing a double hang on a matahina leading up to World in 2022. Then when we got to the World, they'd taken off, I think, 5 meters off a lane. So we didn't have as much room. So instead of doing a double hang, which we had been training to do, we actually had to do a front crank, like hard crank or jab at the front, and seat 2 had to hang, and then sometimes seat 3 had to hang, and then 2 and 3 had to draw in while 1 was still holding there. There is no one way or right way. It's just that when you've done the sprints for a long time, you know the different things that you can try. If you're not sure what to do, you watch videos of people doing turns in the canoe that you'll be racing in the condition that you'll be racing in, and preferably your age, gender. Because what an open man can do to what a golden master or 60 women can do for a turn is different. So is that helpful for you?
Yes. Yes. And we have Alexander has his hand raised. Alexander, if you want to unmute yourself.
Say that. Sorry, I didn't hear. Can you say that again, please?
Oh, we have Alexander has his hand up. If you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Alexander, you've got to unmute yourself.
I'm going to go on to the next question, but if you get yourself unmuted, I'll get to you next. So Kathy has a question. She says, thank you for what you shared about team dynamics and the 6 seats. This is one of the best descriptions I have heard and emphasized how important the skills are. Teamwork and communication. She said she loved it.
Thanks.
All right.
Any other?
If you can't unmute yourself, Alexander, you can always just type your question in the Q&A box too. Anybody else have any other questions or any other comments? You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
And if you think of anything later on, we'll include my email address, so you can just flick an email address. Then I'd like to be able to offer to you all a free 30-minute console. So I'll send to Ainley a link where you can book a free catch up with me, just as Thank you for participating today. And in case you've got some questions that you want to ask but may prefer to ask just directly.
Okay. And how do they get a hold of you? What is your website?
My website is internationalpaddlingcoach.com.
And all of your programs and everything are there?
This is it here. And that's our logo. But I can put it in the chat as well. Let's have a look here. Where's our little chat?
I don't know if it allows you to, you can just answer one of the questions. Just type it in, just type answer to any of the questions and everyone will be able to see it.
Okay, answer live. And I'll put down here. Oh, hang on. I'd like to answer this question. Oh, type answer. Hang on. Yep.
And I'll send an email to everyone too, just with the information and the link that Vesna mentioned as well.
Yeah. There you go. So I went on to someone's and just replied to it, but yeah, it's internationalpaddlingcoach.com, and this is the logo here. So the VR, this is a V and an R, which means Vesna Radonich, my name.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Vesna. I really appreciate all of your time that you gave us today. I have recorded this session, so I'll make sure that everybody gets the link as well and they can share that around with everyone. I just want to thank you very much for everyone to show up tonight. We do these just about every month. We'll find someone to do a session with, paddlers from all over the world. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, the next one is going to be Anna Levesque. She's from Mind Body Paddle. She is a mental agility coach and she's an elite level whitewater coach. So she loves to play in class 3, 4, 5. If there's anything you wanted to know about water or water safety or mental agility, she's your gal. So Thursday, November 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern will be our next one. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you so much, Vesna.
That's so good. Thank you so much for the opportunity, everyone. And just if when Anlila offers these seminars, jump on board because I'm still learning, and to become not just great but an amazing paddler at your sport, you need to be willing to learn and grow. So grab every opportunity you can to learn and grow.
Okay. All right. Good night, everyone.